All right, so we're finally at the point where we can start introducing the project for the course this semester. I've taught this course two other times, and in those two other sessions we did complete projects. The first time we did not do the data collection, but the analysis was quite involved. There's a drawback to not actually designing the experiment yourself, is you don't get that experience, and that's to me an essential component of this course, is actually designing the experiment and thinking through the statistical model before you start collecting data. So this experiment, as well as the experiment we ran the last time I taught this course, allows you to fully design an experiment, think through the statistical model that you believe you're going to use, decide how you collect data, perform the data collection, pre-process the data for analysis, analyze your data, write it up in a report. Sounds like a lot, I know, but we're going to be working together, and we will also kind of use a collective approach so that we can share resources and get this done together as a class. So last semester, I actually worked with a couple of professors, a psychology professor and an environmental education professor on campus, to do a study that assessed people's the proximity effect in individuals viewing animals that are perceived as either dangerous, disgusting, or fearful. So it actually consisted of viewing some specific arthropods. We had multiple factors in the experiment, and I want to give you a little virtual experience of what was done. We had the proximity effect, which got into how close or far the participant was from the animal. So the idea is, if you're fearful or perceive an animal as dangerous or disgusting, you might have a greater reaction if you're very close to it versus further from it. But then there was also another factor that was incorporated into the experiment, was whether or not the live animal was present or a picture of the animal was present for the participant. Okay, so this was done in 2018, just to be clear. None of you are going to be participating in this experiment about this animal-based experiment about fear, danger, and disgust of arthropods. But I want to give you a little taste of what the participants in the study got by showing you some pictures right now. So remember, at this point, go ahead and write down in your notes for the project that the students varied with regard to how close they were, how proximate they were to the animal, and then the type of animal they viewed. Did they view a picture of this animal, or did they see the live animal? And we had the live animal in the same container from which you'll see the pictures in just a moment. So I'm going to show you those pictures of the animals just so you know enough. And also you'll know at this point, you might write this down right now as well, that there were 4 different arthropods used in this experiment. Okay. Remember too that we had them make judgments about their level of fear, their level of danger, and their level of disgust. These are generally called avoidance emotions. This is why I was working with a psychologist to run this experiment. Okay, so part of the reason I ran this experiment in 2018 was we could collect the data pretty quickly, or so I thought. It took longer than I anticipated. But it was interesting for the students to think through everything. For your experiment, I want you to really get to know this study, and I'm going to give you the opportunity right now to kind of, like I said, virtually experience it. So I'm going to switch screens. I'm going to pause to do so. Okay, so this was the first animal. I hope I did not scare anyone that the students viewed. You'll notice it's a fairly large black scorpion. I think, if I recall, this was about 4 or 5 inches long in total length. You'll notice it's in a plastic container. The live specimen that was present for a randomly selected portion of the research participants was in the identical container. In fact, the picture was taken by the environmental scientist of the animal within the container. Okay, so that's the first animal. So animal level type 1 is scorpion. The second animal was a cockroach. So this is a very large cockroach. Notice it was very close in size to the scorpion. This happens to be a large species of cockroach that lives somewhere else, not here in El Paso. But again, students were randomized into groups. They viewed the animal from different distances, and they either saw the live animal or the picture of the animal. You're just seeing in the picture, of course. I don't have access to these animals now, so I don't want to show them live anyway. Here's the next. So the second was cockroach. Third was a spider. So again, spider was of the more or less approximate same size as the first two animals, the scorpion and the cockroach. And this was a animal that also we had it live in the room for the data collection, but also pictures. And just to be clear, the students who saw the live animal did not see the pictures. The students who saw the pictures did not see the live animal. We had the room partitioned. So students only saw the version of the animal that they were assigned to for the random treatment. So spider is third. Finally, oh gosh, what is this called? This is called an ambler pigeon. This was new to me at the time. So this is a very rare, it's related, it's called also, I think, a whip scorpion sometimes, or related to whip scorpions, something like this. I am not an entomologist, but these, again, of the same size, in the same kind of setting. There was a live version, the picture version. All right, so this is what the participants saw. Now I'm going to switch screens and talk about the data in particular. So here was the data collected by my 2018 class. You'll notice we have an ID. Notice how this is replicated. I'll talk about why there are multiple same numbers for ID, but ID person 1 was just the first person who went through the experiment. Don't worry about this order variable. This was how we handled the randomization. The class decided to do it this way. I allowed them, but this order variable was a mechanism they used to help determine the order of the animal pictures, because the class decided if they saw the animals, say, in a certain order, they may react differently than if they saw it in a different order. And so they wanted to randomize the order in which the pictures or the animals were viewed by the research participants. So we'll talk about that later, but for right now, just ignore it. Also, the gender of the research participants were recorded. So notice this is all the same for the same participant, and it's not going to change. The age was also recorded for the participants. We recorded sometimes the major. I think this was difficult to get from students because some of them were not always aware of what their major was, or maybe changing majors. We may want to just ignore this in the analysis. We'll kind of wait and see. Notice there's some NAs in there. I don't even remember what all these labels are. All of the research participants were actually in a science methods class for future elementary school teachers. So you'll notice the college is all going to be education. This was misspelled. Ethnicity was also recorded for each research participant. Their home country, where they originated from, was also, so I think it was all just either United States or Mexico. The students decided, this totally came from the students. I hadn't even thought about this, but they wanted to ask them before they collected data on them if they had ever been harmed by an animal. They thought that was important to know before they, I don't remember when they asked this actually. It may have been at the end, if they had ever been harmed by one of these animals, because they had to know what the animal was. So I think that was what it was actually, is they asked at the end. Oh, also one of the ending questions, I think I'm remembering this all now, was whether or not they were interested in using this specific set of animals for teaching purposes in the future. Since these were all going to be elementary school teachers, they would presumably teach some science in the future. Would they ever use, say, a cockroach or a spider in teaching? And that doesn't mean they had to have the animal present, but we clarified in the question, using pictures of the animal, using maybe videos of the animal, a live specimen, of course, if they're interested in that, but in some way incorporating the animal into their classroom in the future. Then we had recorded their levels of fear, danger, and discussed those avoidance emotions. Then the animal being viewed was recorded. So notice it goes 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 1, 2. That corresponds with the order over here for participant 1. And then there's 4 more observations for participant 1. And that's because we repeated the order again. But notice what changed was the distance. So first, the participant was 5 feet away from the animal. And then they were only 1 foot away from the animal. Okay, the class decided upon those distances as being a relatively far distance and a relatively close distance. The estimated distance. So this was what was recorded as the response variable. The idea is that there was evidence in the literature that when people have high levels of avoidance emotion, they tend to underestimate the distance they were from the threat, the perceived threat. So for example, if you see a spider, you might, and we're very scared by it in your house, you might say, it was right next to my foot. Well, it may have been 2 feet away from your foot, but the way you remember it due to the trauma, due to the shock of seeing the spider, is that it was very, very close. And then finally, they had whether or not they saw the mode of the animal, that whether or not it was a picture or a live specimen. Let's see, I'm trying to find the live specimens here. There we go, there's the lab. Okay, so just so you know, the class designed the whole experiment, decided how to carry it out. All the major treatments, which was really the mode, the distance, the animal order, because every participant saw all the animals, but the order in which they saw the animals was randomized. Okay, so the class regarded these factors, main factors of the experiment, as the animal order, the distance, and the mode of seeing the animals. And then the response was that estimated distance. Okay, so the idea is, does proximity, mode, or animal order, potentially animal order, that actually didn't end up in the research question, but do these 3 factors affect the estimated distance reported? And so you might think about within your group, the first time you look at this, how you might begin analyzing this data. This is going to be, first of all, good, I think, level exercise of understanding how to set up the statistical model. I'm going to help you, but I won't tell you how most of the class analyzed it. But this will be the first step, is familiarizing ourselves with the past 2018 experiment and analyzing the data within your group. Then there's going to be a second part I'm going to cover in part 2 video for this project.